not going live. There we go. All right. Guys, today I got James with me again, my business partner at Moral Marriage, and we are going live on taking responsibility in marriage. Now, in the description over on Facebook and on YouTube, everybody, it's no secret. My content is all about blaming the man, i.e., a man taking responsibility and accountability for himself. Okay? Now, I'm not actually blaming a man. I'm a man's coach. I coach men in marriage. So my content is geared towards men taking responsibility. And victim men like to say, hey, fuck you, Cass. The woman, it takes two. So today I wanted to clear the air. You know, on Facebook, we have quite a large following of women. A lot of these men think I'm validating women. Well, we're going to talk today a little bit about two things. Number one, we're going to talk about why a man should take responsibility and why we believe why 95% of our business, maybe 90 at times throughout the year, it's going to be a man joining my program and not a woman joining my wife's program. The first reason that, and the next thing we're going to talk about is the ways that a woman and why a woman can take responsibility, especially if your partner is checked out. Okay. Now, the reason why a man should start this is, in my mind, pretty straightforward. Okay. Why my message is as clear as it is about a man taking responsibility is I am a fucking solid marriage. My wife and I came back from the depths of hell. Okay. And what that means was surviving emotional abuse, severe emotional abuse, physical assaults and intimidation, sexual assaults in the bedroom, a restraining order. Okay. And we saved our marriage. Now, I took responsibility. But here's the thing. My wife took responsibility also. Okay. And so why I convey that is because we are such a strong partnership that I don't need to speak for my wife on my wife's behalf. Okay. My wife holds women accountable. And if any of these victim men commenting on my social media did 1 ounce of research, you'd see where my marriage is at. You'd see how solid we are. And you'd see that my wife holds women accountable. And that being said, a lot of my content, I feel I'm obligated to start helping my wife with that because it's been a few years. And let's face it, she only does the podcast. She's not really posting on social media. So I'm moving my message a little bit, James. What do you think about that? Before we get into who's responsible for what do you think about that, James, about me getting my content speaking to women about taking responsibility too?
Well, I think it's a necessary thing. You know, you're thinking of 80 to 90% of your followers on Facebook. What are you now? 600, 700,000, where are women, because they're fed up with what's happening at home with their men. Their men growing up as children. And so I say, hey, man, you got an audience, you got to speak to it and get ready for some pushback.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to offend a lot of you on Facebook because you're used to hearing me talk specifically about the man taking responsibility. However, I'm going to do this a little bit sneaky. What I'm going to do is speak to relationships in general. But while we're talking about responsibility, let's just keep it super simple. The very first reason we believe, my partner James and I started TikTok, you can't see him, why a man should take responsibility. What's that?
I'm live. I just don't know how to connect us. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There. Okay. The very first reason we think a man should take responsibility is because most people in a successful marriage have one founding principle, and that is leadership. Okay. Now, if you know anything about the Moral Marriage Method, my wife and I, we lead each other in different areas because of different strengths. That's because we both took responsibility now we both take responsibility full time, but at the time it was one of us at a time. Okay. But you need to have somebody start. So if you've got two bitter people, the reality is we think it should be the man. But since we know women can take responsibility too, again, all you victims on social media, you men, of course we know women can take responsibility too. And many women do. They reach out to my wife every day, Catherine Morrow, the White Picket Fence Project. Okay. But the real reason is the person who is on board, who is in. If you're not fucking leaving, change your life. So if you're on board, don't put 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You're the partner taking responsibility.
That's right.
I just think it should be a man, or you're just following your wife's lead. What kind of baby is that?
Got it. Yeah, I'll say it this way too. It's worth saying, Cass, is that when it comes to responsibility, we're not talking about blame. We're not talking about fault, because when we find ourselves in a specific place, especially in relationships, we come to, oh, this is terrible. And it's easy to blame because it justifies that need to be right. It justifies and validates that thing. Well, it's not all my fault. But here's the thing. When it comes to responsibility, everything that we've done from the beginning of time to the place that we find ourselves, we are 100% responsible for everything we've done and we are 100% responsible for 100% of taking responsibility for it. And I know that seems tongue in cheek, but in the reality is that we've got to disassociate responsibility with guilt.
That's right. And I think that's what happens. You feel guilty because you don't like where you're at, and especially in a relationship. It's not like being broke. I mean, sure, you can blame your boss, right? But it's not like being overweight. Sure, you can blame McDonald's or whatever. But the reality is simple. In a relationship, it's easy to not feel guilty by blaming your partner. So we don't want to take responsibility. I want to talk a minute before, because we're going to have a really good exercise for you to take responsibility today. But before we get into it, I want to take a moment to express some of you women following me, okay? Most of you, I dare say, you don't realize the strength that you have. And the reason why I say the most of you is because you have to be willing to take responsibility first, okay?
Right.
The moment you take responsibility, if you know our story, okay, I was charged with assault and I almost went to jail, restraining order, okay? And then I started to do a lot of work. And where I thought I was strong, where it's my wife's turn to take responsibility, I now know and can teach everything I know because I thought I was great, but I was normal. And my wife was into her own hands. My wife, Catherine, started to take responsibility for herself. She describes it like standing in her own strength. She knew how to communicate in order to lift me because she learned, okay? And when she did that, she became the catalyst to me diving deep into reflection, the worst blame pusher, guilt thrower, shame dumper on the planet because I'm a narcissist. Now I manage it because I'm self-aware. Okay. That's right. So women, I want to give you some encouragement. A lot of you have a partner that is not on board, and you see those men commenting on my social media. The ones who don't comment, come join James and me on our app and they go get their life. Okay. That's right. But women, the amount of women that reach out to Catherine, even through me, through a DM first, and then they stand in their own strength. You don't know the power you have to lift your man. My wife, for crying out loud, got me to look at narcissism and get out of it. Most of you don't have that bad of a problem to deal with, right?
That's right. Let me say something about that too, Cass, is that there's a difference in what Cass is saying is that a wife who has put boundaries down, who has had enough and who has established her own identity and is grounded, when she sees the man in her life changing, she can be an extreme catalyst and encourager to that push. We're not talking about women taking on the responsibility of changing the man. That's what's got them into the problem that they're in already. So it's just very important for us to make that distinction that most men, when they show up as children, most women feel like caregivers and mothers, and then this emotionally stunted thing that we call man it's not her responsibility to lead. But when he does change, she can be the fuel behind his fan.
100%. And guys, this goes both ways. That's why we say, do you want to lead? Right? If you want respect, give respect. Well, I have a constant message about that. Give what you want. You want to be adored, adore your partner. Don't smother. I didn't say smother. I said adore your partner. Lift your partner. When Catherine became the catalyst for you women who are fighting with men who won't take responsibility, then she lifted me. She gave me gratitude when she gets in trouble. She gets the heat for this online, right? Considering I'm the one with all the followers, it's kind of bullshit. She gets the heat. If Catherine says, if you're in a fight, I want you to go back in with gratitude. Oh boy, the women get upset. Listen, every bit of piece, I would have 4,000 pieces of content out. You know what I mean? And it's all about the man taking. Like I tell men to do the same thing. You guys got to get a hold of this. If you're the one in, you're the one in.
Right. That is it. So where we want to talk about responsibility then. And I said something yesterday. We coach this in one of our programs we call Inner Court on our community. And I talked about responsible man owns his reality. He owns his actions. He owns his failures. He owns his emotions. He owns his impact. And that's what I mean when I say take 100% responsibility. He doesn't seek permission to be strong. He doesn't require validation. He acts with integrity.
That's right.
No matter who cares or who sees. He leads by anchoring himself in the truth of who he is, and he doesn't chase approval. So in that, his presence as a man who shows up actually not in charge, but leading himself, some others follow him, and his presence stabilizes the people in his life, the relationships, especially with his romantic partner or his wife. And then he's able to operate out of certainty, not reaction. So he's able to respond and engage with certainty instead of reacting and burning everything down.
Exactly. And, it's really important to understand this, you guys, because that same lesson that we taught men on our on our app in our community yesterday is something that you women can also understand, right? You can engage in the exact same way. Catherine says it differently. What Catherine teaches her women is simple. She says, are you proud of the woman that just showed up?
Right.
I'd like to give a couple examples, so we're dealing with one couple right now who, I mean, there's some big mistakes made on his part. I get it. Okay. But he's doing a lot of work and he's working very hard. James and I are both working. He was a private one-on-one client. So we do 2-on-1s. We're working with him. And his wife is stuck, constantly not allowing him to take responsibility. So you see, even if somebody takes responsibility, we find we still get stuck in not taking responsibility on the other side. And it doesn't matter if this is male or female. This goes both ways.
It goes both ways. Right.
Yeah. I think what we should do is we should take them through the exercise that we taught our men yesterday with how you guys can take responsibility for yourself. So we just came up with this on the fly. So everybody who wants to know what they should do to take responsibility, it's really, really simple, because a lot of times it is easier to blame. It is easier to threaten. Oh, fine, fuck it, it's over. I'm leaving you. I did that 700 times to the couch, left Catherine. It's why we cope with alcohol. It's why we watch Netflix and scroll on the phone. What did you call it today? Doom scrolling. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to think back about a week ago, or when the last fight was at least 1 week ago. Okay. And I want you to write it down. Just to highlight the sentence, this is what we fought about. Okay.
It could be a disagreement or a fight. It doesn't have to be an explosion. It could just be something small that irritated you or triggered you.
That's right. Now, when you have that event down, I want you to go underneath it, and I want you to think of nothing that your partner said that they did wrong. I want you to think of everything that you said in reaction or response to your partner. What did you say? What did you do? So if that's like, well, you're a fucking bitch. Okay. Well, you have a small penis. If that's like, well, I left. I want you to write down everything you did. And again, if you think of what your partner said or did, don't write that down. I want you to think about how you reacted and you responded. Okay. Now, when you've done that, I want you to leave 2 spaces below. That was the instruction, right? 2 spaces below each line.
Yep.
Okay. Now, why are we leaving the 2 spaces below? James, tell them.
Well, the 2 spaces below is manifold. Number one is it allows you to go back and to talk into and reflect on what's actually happened. So I sort of learned this from a psychotherapist and a professor at Yale that I listened to a couple of days ago. He says he does this in the context of reflecting and emotions, and it works very well in the situation. So the next line, you go back a day or 2 later or a week later and you say, what did I fear here? And then what really happened? So you basically put a place of reality there. Like what was I really upset about? And then what was the real intention? And then the following thing is you go back sometime later and you answer the question, what did I learn? And then you mentioned, how could I show up differently? So when we learn something, then we can know how we can show up differently in the context of that.
That's right. So what he's getting at is below where you've written that line of all the things that you did. And you're going to have a bunch of lines potentially, especially if it was fights like Catherine and I used to have.
That's right.
So you're taking responsibility for yourself. We're not taking responsibility for our partner. We're just going to look at those, let's say 3 or 5 things that you came up with that you should not have said and should not have done. Okay. Right. And you're going to leave spaces, at least a couple lines below, so that you can revisit this later. Because the next thing you're going to do is now go with them and go, what could I have done differently? Thinking about it from perception versus perspective. Perspective is what you see in the moment. Excuse me. Right. Perception is what you feel because of your whole life and all your experiences. What was actually going on? You see, we don't take responsibility, man or woman, correctly because we're so worried about projecting the blame, pushing the guilt, pushing the shame, because our perception skews our reality. So I want you to think about that. What could I have done differently? And basically, what other reality could I have been seeing?
Yeah, and it's important. It's important to emphasize too, Cass, that the reason we do this is because we are covered up in the layers of false identities and reactionary maladaptive mechanisms and all these other things. Basically, we don't know how to act. We don't know how to think. We don't know how to look through the proper lens. And so when someone attacks us, even when we're seeing them wrong, or it's because we want to be right. And it's not that we are just that arrogant. It's just that we're that defensive, because when someone threatens our correctness, it's like they're threatening our very identity. and we don't know who we are, and it just discombobulates the entire cupcake.
Now you're giving them teasers here. I mean, when you guys understand that you can take responsibility, you can start to realize that you are acting or reacting in a way that is not actually who you are.
Right.
So, Catherine talks about the lizard brain to the women, and we just say you need to grow up over here to the men, right? You're just acting and reacting in a way that doesn't allow you to be the true, authentic version of yourself. Forget this best version, because if you learn to take responsibility correctly, you are never done taking responsibility.
Never done. No, you're done.
What are you going to get comfortable, complacent, and let it all fall apart again?
That's right.
You guys got to get over that. You know.
That's it. That's it.
All right. So if you're just tuning in, okay, we're talking about taking responsibility. Is the man's fault or the woman's fault? Well, it's no one's fault. Taking responsibility isn't about fault. It's about where the fuck do I want to go in my life? And if you know the content, I quote unquote blame men. No, I don't. I hold men accountable with every piece of content being a mistake that I made and a lesson I learned. And now my marriage is on fire. By the way, on this note, algorithms don't lie. If you're seeing my shit, they've dialed it in, guys. You see the shit you need to see. Okay? So men, stop boo-hooing, okay? And just start to realize if you take responsibility, you can create the life that you want.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I'll just say this too, because the people on our side just are watching. I'm having a conversation with my business partner and one of my best friends in the world, Cass Morrow. And we partnered together in a company called Morrow Marriage, and we teach identity and purpose and relationships. And so for those of you who are joining, you can see him. What's your handle, brother? I don't even have it over here.
I'm Cass Foster Morrow.
Cass Foster Morrow on TikTok and then everywhere over social media. So that's what we're talking. We're talking about responsibility and how specifically today men need to take responsibility. And that's what we're talking about. So what do we want to do here?
I just want to reiterate one more time, because a lot of people come on late. And that is, I want you to go through, it's just about 2/3 of the way through here, where you can see how you can start to look at an exercise that's going to allow you to see that you could be different and you're not standing in a direction that's going to push you in the right way. Taking a step today that'll move your tomorrow. Okay. And this exercise is powerful. When we get men to do this, what happens is the more frequently they do this, say every time there's an argument, a disagreement, or an explosive fight, you start to look at your turnaround time faster. You prevent the explosion. And we get off the hamster wheel because we start looking at who we are. Now, I realize some of you will have a partner that will not take responsibility for a while, you know, but what happens is, you know, we have one woman in our program. She was with Catherine for a year because women do take responsibility and they can.
Yeah.
Even if your husband's not on board, just like the men, their wives are almost never on board. Okay. Yeah. It took her about a year, but man, he's like one of the best guys we've ever seen working through the program, and their marriage is on fire. You know, it wasn't fast for Catherine and I, and some men and women go quick. You know, it depends on how well you are taking responsibility and showing up. Like this one woman we were talking about earlier in the program, her husband's doing all this work and she's bringing lists of shit that he's done wrong. Not taking responsibility will never allow you to move forward.
That's right. It's interesting you said that, brother. It's you know, women take responsibility by and large over men, but yet men are the ones who say, "Oh, I'm responsible," because they're working or they're doing this or they're tired or they're laboring. And in all honesty, the mental load that a lot of women carry, men don't understand, aren't interested in learning, and don't care when they're told about it. They think of it as complaining. And so a lot of times what we see is that men finally come to us when their wives have said, "I've had enough. I'm done. I'm gone," and they've checked out. And there's a misconception sometimes in the world of reconciliation, the world of growth, is that it takes both people in a relationship to actually. I think that it's because what we're not saying is that women don't have a responsibility, but women have been carrying the responsibility of a man-child for so long, while the man has been causing so much of the headache that they haven't taken any responsibility for anything. So that's our modality. It's time for you to man up and take responsibility. But speak to that for a minute for the people who are listening about how it doesn't take both people, that one person can finally stand up and lead the other by example.
Yeah, what Catherine and I figured out was the reason that we were always set back was because, or the reason why it took us so long, I should say, is because one of us was in, and then the other would come in and the other would pull back and say, "It's your turn." Right? So now if you think about one of the first things we learn in the reset is like, and Catherine teaches it right away too, is now it's going to let them have their turn by taking responsibility. And the reason is simple, because you can only stand in your own strength and your own power. If you are emotionally stuck and tied to your partner, and I don't mean that in a negative way if it's good, okay, but you wouldn't feel or describe it like being stuck if it was good, okay? You wouldn't think. That's why we say marriage doesn't work, okay? Because we love our life, okay?
When it's healthy.
Pardon me?
When it's healthy, it's not
It's healthy. That's right. Yeah. But what you can have is an opportunity for that if you start acting like that person. That person can only take responsibility. So if you're a man and your wife, that's what we get. We get a wife who's so checked out. I'm not in love. I'm settling. I'm coasting. She's just fed up. She's doing the divorce thing, whatever. And then all of a sudden he hits his rock bottom and he finally wants to take responsibility. Here's the disconnect. It's not that women don't take responsibility. It's because of what James was mentioning earlier. Women have been running the home for so long, okay? It doesn't matter how much you work. The home is what you're losing. So stop talking about how much work, man.
There you go.
That you do outside of the home. That's I mean, we're just talking about some of our clientele today, and they don't give a fuck about your bank account, man. If you don't, you might as well. I was thinking about filming a new piece of content in that fucking RV shed out there going, this is what your house might as well be, because that's a massive RV shed. Going, you might as well just go have a home like this. It's empty, right?
Empty.
On the
flip side, nothing. There's nothing there.
Right. On the flip side, if you're a woman and you're anyone that the type of woman that's going to work with my wife because your husband's not on board, sure, you've been running the home, but you're not leaving. You don't want to lose your kids. This is a shitty life for you too, so you can take responsibility.
That's right.
Either way, it's going to suck until both of you jump both feet in.
Right.
Somebody's got to get started, or you might as well call your fucking lawyer. This client
break up.
I haven't had a chance to catch up with Catherine. She might be getting fired. If it's been 6 weeks and you're not doing step one, don't waste our fucking time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We don't chase men. We make men who make men. Mm-hmm. And here's something too that you have to understand too, guys, especially you men who are paying attention, or if you're not, you're just human. Most of the people who will watch this will be women. I promise you. And they're like, yeah, go get them. But there's a reality, men, if you don't stand up and become worthy of being married to, that you won't be. And you need to get used to being single, and you need to get used to every relationship that you go into is going to end the same way. Women are sick and tired of playing mama to grown ass boys. That's just fine.
That's it. So we really do. Yeah. The content will almost always be mostly geared towards men, because we just believe men should be big fucking men. Handle little wife's emotions. That's mostly the problem. You mentioned fixing earlier. You don't want to take responsibility because you tried to fix it for so long instead of just be there and realize every time you invalidated emotions, feelings, everything, you tried to fix that after instead of just being there for her.
Yeah.
So that is a you fucking problem, man.
You problem.
It's a you problem, man. That's it. And women, again, if you're stuck, you can take responsibility, or else you might be stuck for a long time, or it's eventually over. I made that post with the example of the divorce papers. I got the divorce papers. Thanks, baby. I was gonna have s'mores later tonight. Oh, it pissed a lot of women off. Okay, if she's done, respect it. Blah blah blah. No, that's not what we do. See, why do we say men should take responsibility? Because that's the clear message. Everything that we say, right? What do we want? We want the marriage. So she might. I respect that she wants a divorce. That's not what I'm saying.
When I started out today, I repeated sort of what I talked about yesterday in our training, that a mark of a responsible man is he owns his reality, his actions, his failures, his emotions, and his impact. And he leads without seeking permission or validation. But that's not strong-arming. That's not maniacal. That's not controlling. No. He's anchored in truth, not approval. So in the converse, the antithesis of this is that the child in a grown body seeks direction instead of taking initiative. He confuses defiance with strength. He prioritizes pleasure over being fulfilled, and he avoids responsibility by choosing to give excuses over execution.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we should leave you with today, guys. Excuses. Just summarize it as excuses. All the reasons. We call it reasons if we're blaming. We call it reasons if we feel guilty. They're all just excuses. You are responsible for your choices. That's it. Every choice that led up to where you are today, including the one that includes a partner.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's all right. You have any last words?
Yeah. A child seeks a father. A real man becomes one for himself and others. So
I like that. See how it always just goes back to the man? How do you like them apples?
You know what? The world's blamed women long enough. It's time for them to actually get hurt.
You know, before we go, we should talk about that. It was like, what was it 1974? Women could fucking 72 or 74. Women could actually fucking get a loan.
Credit cards. Yeah.
Credit cards. Yeah. 1974. So men don't like this fucking minuscule piece of period of time where women are fighting back. Like, what a bunch of fucking pussies. People call me feminist. No, like just a fucking bitch ass man. It's been a few fucking years. It was yesterday where women could vote, man. What the fuck? Like, I think it's just the dumbest logic. Men are supposed to be logical.
Yeah. And you know what it all boils down to? It all boils down to this, Kaz, is that men are insecure at the root. And so they can't handle the pressure of not being the big bad wolf and keeping it all done. And they misunderstand what strength is. They think that aggression is strength.
Mm-hmm.
Or they think that, suppressing their emotion is strength, or that status is strength, or independence is strength, or being overly emotional is strength. There's no groundedness there, because it all boils down to the fact that they are so desperately in need for a relationship to define who they are, that finally, when their wives or their girlfriends or their romantic partners or whoever, they start to wake up and say, I don't need this anymore.
Well, that's 100% right. And now these poor, insecure little boys that you're talking about are so angry. Think about it. Every one of you that's fighting on my social media is the one that's going home so angry, so insecure. If you just actually knew who you were, you'd realize, if I took responsibility to find out who I was, I wouldn't be so dependent on her, and I could go in with love for her.
That's right.
Men have no fucking clue. You'll have needs met by your wife that you never even thought of. You never dreamed of.
You didn't know you had them.
You didn't know you had them because you don't even know who you are. You know who you are at your job.
That's right.
You know who you are with your buddies, but you don't even know who the fuck you are in your home. And if you took a real hard look at yourself, in fact, do that. Men especially, go upstairs, go down the hall, go look in the mirror, and think about everything you want. I'm going to say you probably think about sex first for a second. Look at what you look like in the mirror. Reflect back with the exercise that we talked about earlier. What came out of your mouth the last time you had a fight?
Yeah.
Look at your text messages. What do they look like? This girl that I was talking about earlier with this big, huge list. We got screenshots from her husband. Man, he was like, would you like to come over for a rom-com? And just hang out and chill, baby. She fucking blew up on him. See, this is not taking responsibility. I know that's a female example, but it's because our men know better than to do that. But,
better.
You guys, so easy to get what you want. You just got to know what to. If you need help, go.moralmarriage.com. That's our app. Go.moralmarriage.com. Create an account. Women's community, men's community. We keep it separate for a reason, obviously. Let's show you how to take responsibility and go get your life.
Let's do it.
Right. See you.
Take care, guys.
See you, buddy.